I want to take just a few minutes to talk to you about a concept that's helped a lot of couples as they work through the difficult transition of separation or divorce. And the concept is called the relationship wheel. I first heard about this from Steve Erickson and Marilyn McKnight, who are very well-known mediators in Minnesota. And they happened to get it from a lady by the name of Susan Gribbin, who is from Australia, where she is a consultant to mediation. But the relationship wheel helps to show the successful transition that couples must achieve in order to succeed for themselves and their children. And we have a diagram. If you take a look at it on the screen, you'll see that it shows a wheel and that there are 4 quadrants in it. And in the 4 quadrants, there are 4 different kinds of relationships. And Steve Erickson, as he explained it to me, says that the important thing to begin to understand is that all relationships that we will ever have in our lives will be of one of these 4 varieties. In the upper right-hand corner, there are friendships. In the lower right-hand corner, positive intimacies, love, attraction, vows, dreams of growing old together. In the lower left-hand corner, negative intimacies. I can't believe it turned out this way. I can't believe you turned out this way. And in the upper left-hand corner, business relationships. Well, there are basically 6 things that can be learned very quickly from this relationship wheel. And the first is suggested by the arrows on the outside of the diagram. And that is that when relationships change, they tend to change in this direction. That is, friendships may lead into something more. That is, something more positive, something more personal, something more intimate. So positive intimacies, love, attraction, the idea of maybe having children together, of having a permanent, lifelong love partnership. When that fails, if it changes, we tend to go through this period of negative intimacy. That is hurt and distress and resentment and anger and bitterness and depression. We don't tend, if a marriage fails, for example, to say, well, you know what, that didn't work. We'll open a craft store together, or we'll open a Dairy Queen together or something. We don't go into a business relationship. We go through this very difficult negative intimacy. So that's what's in the lower left-hand quadrant of the relationship wheel. And the upper left-hand corner is the 4th relationship, business relationships. So that's the first thing to learn, is that when relationships change, they tend to go in that direction. The second thing is to be learned from that word rules, which is right under the word business. Business relationships are the only relationships that are run on the basis of rules. In friendships, I recently moved my law and mediation offices, and because I didn't want to pay professional movers to do all of it, I called some of my best friends and told them, hey, we're going to have coffee and donuts Saturday at 8 o'clock. Well, guess what? They were my friends. They had to be there. Our relationship isn't really run by rules. It's run by our friendship. The same for positive intimacies. When we're falling in love, we've taken someone home from a date maybe, but at 3 in the morning we wake up thinking about them. We call them, well, guess what? They have to take the call because we're just crazy and all blended and into each other. Negative intimacies, not many rules there either. You say 1 rotten thing about me, I say 3 rotten things about you. You file a motion about me, I file 2 motions about you. And we're all blended in a really negative way. We're still very much focused on each other. Business relationships are the one relationship that are run by rules. You can think of this as the drive-through McDonald's window. You know, if you wanted the large size, well, it's an extra 20 cents. You can think of it as almost any employer-employee relationship. The employer wants to have a certain job done, the employee wants to be paid, and so they get into a contract and an understanding about that. But it's run by the rules that, you know, if we do this and it meets my needs, then we'll meet your needs that you need. So that's what couples are really moving toward in a healthy divorce. It doesn't sound very romantic. It isn't. It's a move away from intimacy. It's a move toward a relationship that is no longer focused on each other, either positively, the love, the attraction, the vows, and so forth. That fell apart. But it's also not focused on each other negatively. We're not attacking each other. We are now shoulder to shoulder in this sacred task of giving our children a good world to live their one and only childhood. Let's minimize their losses, because they have huge losses, of course. Let's make sure they're not at a disadvantage compared to other children. That's the business that we're in. So divorced parents you might think of as being in the Joey and Kristen business. We're in the Joey and Kristen business. We're not in the business anymore of psychoanalyzing each other or attacking each other or bringing up a lot of history. We're in the Joey and Kristen business. So that's the second thing, is to understand that a successful divorce is to some extent written by rules. Not rules that we club each other over the head with or take each other to court should we violate them, but they are rules that we generally use to kind of describe how we're going to get along in this new shoulder-to-shoulder relationship, not focused on each other, but focused on the needs of these fragile children who are already hurting because of our separation and divorce. The third thing that we can learn is from that small circle and arrow on the left-hand part of the diagram, the one that goes from negative intimacies to business relationships. That little circle with that little arrow in it shows what a successful divorce is about. And as I said a moment ago, it doesn't sound very romantic. You mean, well, we're not going to be best friends, we're not going to be attached to each other in that real personal way? No, you know what, we're not. And that's why, to some extent, the messages about the relationship rule are related to another article that we have, or another topic you've probably thought about, which is the matter of grieving, of going through those processes of denial, anger, bargaining, but then depression, and finally acceptance. It's getting to a point of having kind of a business relationship. We should eventually end up with warm feelings toward each other to some extent. We should be able to walk our kids down the aisle. We should be grateful that we gave each other the greatest gift we'll ever have in our lives, these little treasures. But it is a business relationship. It's a relationship that has some separation and distance and a focus shoulder to shoulder on something other than ourselves. We're not focused here any longer. We're focused shoulder to shoulder on these kids who need us. The fourth thing that I think we can learn from this is suggested again by that drive-through window at McDonald's, or the employee-employee relationship, which is think of those relationships. Why do they work? They work because people are not involved in, a lot of intimate personal activity. They're not saying, well, you know what, you're like that because you're a narcissistic personality with histrionic tendencies, and all these things that we can get involved in, diagnosing each other and blaming each other and finding all these problems in each other. So think of that analogy. When you think about how can I make my co-parenting relationship better, well, how would I be doing with the conversation I'm proposing to have with my co-parent really be the kind of one I would have at the drive-through window at McDonald's? If you think of McDonald's, by the way, imagine if you had a terrible disappointment in your day, which is this. You were thinking all day of having a McDonald's milkshake, a chocolate shake, and you were just looking forward to it, and you go through the wait at the window, and you get to the window, and they say, oh, you know what, our milkshake machine isn't working today. Is it likely that we would start yelling at the person, well, you idiot, you morons, you're always doing this. This happened a couple of weeks, you guys are... We don't do that. Why? Well, because it's a business relationship. It's just about getting the shake, or in that case, dealing with a little bit of disappointment. And that's what we need to get to in our relationships with our co-parents, is to leave the history behind, leave that intimate, that's an intimate activity, to be blaming each other and analyzing each other and finding faults in each other. So think of a good business relationship and bring as many of those skills and those qualities to the relationship that you can have with your co-parent. The fifth thing that I think that we can learn is that there is nothing about a failed intimate relationship, that is a failed marriage or failed live-in relationship, that means that you need to fail at your business relationship. This is a different kind of relationship, and the world, fortunately, is full of people and full of examples of couples who have had bad marriages, but you know what? They move past that. They move past that. They close the door on it. They agree. We don't need to agree about how our marriage failed, how our personal relationship ran into troubled waters. What we need to agree on is that we have a joint task of giving our kids a good world to live their one and only childhood. We need to minimize their losses, and we need to give them the closest approximation of what they would have had if we had had a successful marriage, which means a respectful, predictable, business-like relationship between us, a respectful, business-like relationship between us. And the final thing that I think that we can learn and that we can take some comfort from is that this is not all that easy and immediate, but it will happen. And why, by the way, why is it difficult? It's because intimacy draws us in, both the positive intimacy of the attraction and negative intimacy. When somebody fires something at us, the tendency is to fire back. It can be a little bit difficult. That's why it's heroic. It's a journey away from something that really is kind of calling our instincts to jump into. It's a journey away from intimacy. Think about this relationship wheel, and think about the ways in which it can help you clarify the business relationship that your children desperately need you to have in order to succeed for them and for yourself.